Hello, Scream Demons, and welcome to the Screams from the Basement podcast with Sam and Casey.
This is a bi-weekly horror podcast in which two horror fans discuss all things, including horror news, recent watches, horror collectibles, and more.
I am one of your co-hosts, Casey.
And I'm Sam. And
let's get screaming. Sam!
Yes.
We are not alone today. It is not just Sam and Casey here on Screams from the Basement. We are joined with our first official guest to Screams from the Basement. He is an author. He's an entrepreneur. He is a horror fan. He is representing Ash Williams on his T-shirt today, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll get a shot of that.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Doug Murano. Welcome to the show, Doug. Welcome.
Thank you. Really thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be your first guest on this show. So excited to talk all things Evil Dead with you today.
We are absolutely thrilled to have you because just letting people know, like, obviously me and Sam, if people have been listening to the show, we're from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Mm-hmm. You are also from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I don't think there's a whole lot of us horror nerds out there, or if there is, we just have yet to find each other. And I think this is one of those times where us horror nerds have found each other. And this is going to be one of those us South Dakota folks are just going to nerd out for the next hour and a half or so.
Yeah, I love it. You're right. We're few and far between those hardcore fans. And so I'm always so pleased to make acquaintance with folks who can speak my language instead of giving me the look like, you seem so nice, Doug. Like, what, you like horror? And, it's so, yeah, I get that a lot. So it's good to be among friends today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Doug, I'm going to ask you first of all, before we get into our rundown of the show, we're talking some new Evil Dead today. We gave a little preamble on that. You wearing the Bruce Campbell shirt. We're not talking Bruce, though. We're talking the remake, I guess. It's a remake of the 2013 one and the new Evil Dead Rise. We're going to talk about those a little later on in the show. But before we get to that and the latest horror news, Doug, I'm going to ask you, let's talk a little bit about Bad Hand Books.
Yeah.
Explain to us a little bit what that is. What's it all about? What type of books, you are putting together? What is Bad Hand Books?
So the short version is I've been working in the horror business in publishing for about the last 10 years. And so I've been working with other publishers, small and independent presses, to put out horror anthologies. So I kind of earned my stripes, in that arena. And I ended up working with a lot of authors that I grew up reading. So Clive Barker and Neil Gaiman have been in my couple of my anthologies. And then some newer voices, Josh Mallerman, the author of Bird Box, Paul Tremblay, who recently had a novel adapted to Knock at the Cabin. And so I've really kind of spent the last decade knocking around the business, building up connections. And then about 2 years ago, I thought, why not go out on my own? And so I founded my independent press, Bad Hand Books. And we are coming out of the gates swinging. We do anthologies, horror anthologies, and then single author works. We published Eric LaRocca, who went viral a couple of years ago with Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. We did a novella in pieces with him. We've got a Laird Barron, Isaiah Coleridge novella coming up that's more dark supernatural crime. We've got Michael Wehunt with a short story collection coming out in June. He does really weird / folk horror that's extremely unnerving. And then we're going to be doing books for younger readers as well, and novels and other types of exciting projects coming into 2024. So we've got a lot on our plates. And when I say our plates, I mean my plate. We're like a one-man shop, but saying our makes it sound bigger than it really is. But there's just a lot going on, and I'm super excited. And it's really exciting to be doing this from South Dakota because we don't really have a name for ourselves in the business. And so I'm kind of excited to plant my flag here and see what happens.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it really feels like people are taking notice. It feels like you guys are garnering a lot of attention in some very cool ways. I don't know. I admire what Bad Hand Books does. I know you guys you guys kind of champion like some underutilized voices, or yeah.
That's really part of our mission, is to lift up those marginalized voices.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be, our first single author work was aggressively queer, and I think that that's an important thing to be doing from South Dakota. I don't want to get too political, but it's hard to do that nowadays when it's just who you are can be political. But I think it's really important to represent that point of view from here in South Dakota from a publishing standpoint. Not only in general should publishing lift up marginalized voices, but doing it in horror, publishing objectionable material in South Dakota, featuring people that they may want to ban is, I think it's a good place to be right now.
Yep. It's just, yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
Thank you.
I'm seeing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Sam.
It's awesome. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask a follow-up to that. You mentioned, publishing horror work for younger audiences. What's your history with horror? That's a big thing for us is gateway horror. We talk about it a lot on this show on the stuff we grew up with. What got you into horror though?
So, probably the first time I ever felt really freaked out was the first time I read Where the Wild Things Are when I was really little. And it just seemed, it's not horror, but there's a point at which they say, "We'll eat you up, we love you so." And when I was a kid, I thought to myself, I didn't have the sophistication to figure it out, but or to reflect properly on it. But the collision of sort of that love and consumption and the potential for violence, a lot of horror is wrapped up in that little moment. But then, I was a Dark Crystal kid. That's more dark fantasy, but there's some horrific elements there. Labyrinth. And then when I was 13 years old, I went to a garage sale and bought Stephen King's It, and spent the summer reading that. And it changed my life. There are certainly some spots, having kids of my own now, I wonder, like, what's the right age for the book that ends in a sewer orgy? But
yeah.
And I don't know if there's an answer for that, but I found it then. And after that, it was really all I wanted in life. It was all I wanted to do. And I think so many authors and other professionals in the business who are about my age have a Stephen King story. It's kind of cliche, but it's the truth.
Yeah, he's synonymous with horror. It's hard to not have an origin that's at least somewhat based in him, because he's kind of like, he's like air in the horror community. He's just kind of there,
100%.
I
Yeah.
was going to say it seems to be either the novel or the TV miniseries.
Yeah.
I would say even now for kids, the recent remake is kind of that introduction for so many different people. Just the overall story of it, because I didn't read the original novel as a kid, but I saw the TV miniseries, just the cover and like the opening scene, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to watch that.
And it's so brilliant in the way that it's broken down, because there's a whole half of the book that deals with children and adolescents, and then there's the adult half. And so the demographic appeal of a novel like that is just devastatingly smart and good. I won't say that it was a calculated thing. I think it was done as art, but it just so happens that it is structured in such a way that it gets everybody.
Yeah. I would agree with that, because that book is very different when you read it as a kid versus when you read it as an adult. There are different parts that you start picking up on and gravitating towards. It's kind of, that book is a labyrinth.
100%.
Yeah, you can get lost in it. So.
All right. Well, let's kind of jump into the format of the show. Let's first jump into some horror news. We got some big news to talk about. I'm going to hit the little musical cue and we'll jump into it. All right, Sam, what's first up from our horror news?
The first up from Stellar News is the original Black Christmas actress Olivia Hussey, who played Jess in the 1974 classic, is returning to face Billy in the fan film It's Me, Billy, Chapter 2. This is Dave McCrae directed a short film that is a sequel to his other one, obviously, It's Me, Billy. And have either of you seen the first It's Me, Billy? No?
No.
Okay. So as far as fan films go, It's Me, Billy is one of my all-time favorites. It's tremendous. It captures the tone and the spirit of the 1974 one very well. And it even kind of incorporates little elements from the 07 remake, 06 remake. Whether or not that's your cup of tea, it's kind of fun the way it incorporates it. And I remember watching it home alone one like the weekend it dropped, and I had to watch cartoons until about 3 a.m. afterwards. It was pretty intense. I loved it. I'm really excited. I was really excited they were doing another one, and now I'm even more excited that Olivia Hussey's coming back to the franchise because she's incredible. She's just from Black Christmas. She's Norma Bates from Psycho 4. She's an icon. So, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched the original fan film It's Me, Billy. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the original Bob Clark. I'm also a fan. I'm a fan of all three, actually. I like all three Black Christmas movies. I really like the 06 Black Xmas one quite a bit, and even the Blumhouse one. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. This is kind of cool that we're seeing a lot more fan films do the franchise right by bringing back the actors who portrayed these characters years and decades ago back to the franchise, because we're seeing it with the Never Hike Alone crew with Vincent DeSante, who has brought back so many people from the Friday the 13th franchise, and they're doing a sequel now to that one too. So it's really cool to see so many different fan films bring back actors and people who worked on the original films back to the series. Dave McCrae is also working on the Dylan's Nightmares.
That's right.
Fan film, which is Miko Hughes coming back to reprise his role from New Nightmare too. So he's no stranger to the fan film genre, and I think it's pretty cool, especially if studios aren't wanting to do a direct sequel. Why not let the fans do it?
Yeah, especially if these actors are willing to come back. It just shows that it's a horror family. We all love what we do. So
it's one of my favorite things about the horror business is, and the genre in general, is like, once you're in, right? Like, once we love you, then that's forever. And so it's when these actors and actresses come back from the classics, it's like they never left, and we love them as much as we did the first time we saw them. And that's a really cool thing about horror. I don't know that it's like that in any other subgenre, the power of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah, we horror fans, if we love something, we really love something, and we're not going to lose that love very fast.
Loyalty is in the brand.
That's right.
Right. Our next story that we're here to talk about is Oliver Park is directing a new Blair Witch movie for Lionsgate. Casey, I'm going to throw this one to you because I know you're a massive Blair Witch fan. And I mean the franchise, not the 2016 movie. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
You can put the words in my mouth. That movie's not very good. Yeah, I love Blair Witch. I love the entire mythos of the Blair Witch series. Even some of the mythos of the 2016 one, even though it's not very good. I just love that we're getting back into that world, because I think it is something we can explore either through TV or books or video games, which they've done all of those with the Blair Witch mythology. They did the the Sci-Fi Channel documentary when the first film came out, which was like an accompanying piece to the original film that presented the original film as this, real documentary of these real film students that went missing in the woods. You got the Blair Witch video game, which just came out, I think, 2 years ago, 2021. Was a great addition to the franchise. And then you have a ton of different books that explore the Blair Witch mythology. So yeah, I am super excited to get back into this world. I would like to see them explore other stories that are brought up, because for me, the thing that was kind of missing in the 2016 one was we didn't get any further explanation or mythology to the actual Blair Witch, whether it be Rustin Parr or the actual Blair Witch. So I would like to see them explore that a little further. Let's be weird. Let's be Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows weird with this one.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. I don't know. If there's a new Blair Witch movie, I'm going to be there for it. I was lukewarm on the 2016 one. I still haven't seen Book of Shadows all the way through. I've caught bits and pieces of it. It was one of those that was playing late night on TV all the time at friends' houses, and I just catch bits and pieces, but I've never actually watched the whole thing. But the first one's obviously like a classic. Yeah. Doug, are you excited for a new Blair Witch?
I love Blair Witch. I didn't love Book of Shadows, but I will say I can appreciate that they took a big swing. They didn't try to do the same thing. They tried to shake up the formula and really abandon the formula and deepen things a little bit. And so whether they succeeded in that, I hate to get too far down on any piece of art, because I've said before, like, any piece of art that exists is a friggin' miracle. And so, it wasn't my cup of tea, but I can appreciate that they took a big swing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that won't be the only time that sentiment is brought up in this episode. The not my cup of tea, but excellent work.
Yeah.
Right. Like
I love that it exists, and I love that people are continuing to dig into it. I would like to understand a little bit more about the mythos itself. I didn't get into anything beyond the movies. And so, what is this force? What does it want? All of that is a little bit unclear, and sometimes that's okay. But for this type of a story, I think a little bit more clarity would do well in the sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So our final story in Seller News is a bit of a clickbait thing, I think. Beetlejuice 2, is it finally happening? Tim Burton, Danny Elfman, Michael Keaton in talks to return, and Jenna Ortega is rumored to join the cast. Let me start by saying, if this is true, I'm totally stoked for it. I'm very excited for a second Beetlejuice movie, but I've also been very excited for a second Beetlejuice movie for most of my life now. So, Doug, do you like Beetlejuice? You excited for Beetlejuice 2?
Yes. That was probably one of the things I should have mentioned in my formative years. That whole early Tim Burton aesthetic, Michael Keaton's totally manic performance. It's just beautiful. Just the music. I was completely into Pee-wee's Big Adventure around that time, and just that sort of campy horror really appeals to me, and I love horror that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it still has its scary moments, and I think Beetlejuice just threads that needle perfectly.
Yep. Casey and I are both massive fans of Beetlejuice. We love it.
and Jenna Ortega is quickly becoming sort of a horror icon in her own right, between Wednesday Addams and the Scream series. And I cannot wait to see what she does next. Oh, and also X. She was in X. She was wonderful.
And she was in Studio 666, the Foo Fighters one.
And she was in Babysitter Killer Queen.
Yeah.
What? Okay. Yeah. I've got some work to do then.
She's had a busy couple of years in the horror biz. it's great. It's great to see a young actress like that, like really commit to the genre, and she's so good too. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll gladly accept you as one of us, Jenna.
Well, exactly. And there hasn't really been somebody who has had that through line like Jenna for a while now. I mean, she's sort of taking the Jamie Lee Curtis-esque pathway through her career. And that's cool. That's exciting.
Yep.
I was
Absolutely.
gonna say she reminds me a lot of Winona Ryder, which is who she is rumored to play the daughter of in this movie. Again, I say rumored because I don't know if I believe any of this because it has been talked about for literally probably my entire life of Beetlejuice 2. There was even talks of Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii, which I hope that's this movie because yeah, why not? Yeah, I don't know. Once I see that this movie's in production and I see Keaton wearing the makeup again, I will believe it. Until then, I'm very skeptical. Yeah, I just don't know what to expect anymore from this rumors of Beetlejuice 2. I'm also a little hesitant, even though I love Tim Burton. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. He's been very hit or miss, to put it lightly, in the last decade plus.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I maybe he can capture that Tim Burton magic one more time for Beetlejuice, and maybe this will be his swan song. I think that would be pretty dang cool. It's nice to see Keaton go back to some of these roles that made him famous in the first place. Where's Mr. Mom 2? When is that going to happen?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm tentatively excited for this. Once I see Keaton in that makeup, I will say I'm excited.
Casey, just the knowledge now that you're also a Mr. Mom fan. I don't think we've ever talked about that movie, but
we've never talked to Mr. Mom on this movie or on this podcast, Sam. No,
I feel like
rules.
we've really shared something today, fellas.
Yeah. We all love early Michael Keaton.
That's right. You can't beat it.
No.
Let's get nuts.
Oh man. All right. Well, now that seller news has been discussed, Casey, it's time to open your toy box and see what's inside.
Oh no, that sounds scary.
Does.
First up, we're talking about our friends at Super 7. They're releasing a new line of action figures in their reaction line. These are the 3¼ inch pre-code horror, which is a brand new line of action figures. These are inspired by the pre-code horror comics of the 50s. This is super cool. So some of the figures that they are going to be releasing, it looks like, I don't think they've actually named any of these figures besides the kooky characters that look like, one of them looks like they're straight out of Scooby-Doo and one looks like a bearded Swamp Thing creature from the Black Lagoon. But these look really cool. I'm not gonna lie, Super 7 has been knocking it out of the park with all of their designs for their action figures, and this is no stranger to the reaction line in terms of quality that you're gonna get with these. Sam, what are your thoughts? I know we've talked about the reaction line here on the podcast a couple times from Super 7. We're both very much on the fence because of the price point that these start at. But what are your thoughts on just the figures in general?
I mean, these figures are cool, man. Like, I love 50s horror. I love atomic horror. I love creature feature stuff. Like, that's my jam. And this era of horror is just one of my favorites. And these all look super cool. I think I'm happy with, just looking at a picture of them. But they're super cool looking. I personally love the diving suit ghost guy zombie. Like, oh my gosh, that's cool. It reminds me of a Scooby-Doo villain. Like, yeah, I love it. Doug, do you do a lot with collecting like action figures, statues, stuff like that?
I actually have quite a few, and so they're kind of everywhere around Bad Hand World headquarters. I picked this little guy. This is a minifig. This is Pinhead minifig.
Oh,
picked that up
nice.
at SuperCon last year, and then I've got a little stripe gremlin.
That's awesome.
But then, a lot of Star Wars. I've actually got, speaking of Pee Wee Herman, I've got some like vintage Pee Wee going on in here.
That's
And
rad.
and so, yeah, I kind of love to be surrounded, when I'm at my desk, it's like, this is the fun, imaginative zone. And so I
Yep.
like to have all my friends here with me, cheering me on.
That's
So this is
awesome.
really cool. And I love this era of horror as well. The Bad Hand logo kind of goes back to that EC Comics feel where it's
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of like drippy a little bit. And so this is like totally my aesthetic. So this is awesome.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, these rule. Again, Super 7 pre-code horror 3.25-inch action figures coming. I think the pre-order for these is already out on Super 7's website. So if you are interested in those, go check it out there. Next up, in terms of toys, these are some more Monster Madness going on. This is Rush Collectables Monster Masters, which is a brand new line of figures from Rush Collectables, who started off as a wrestling figure company doing kind of the old school WWF size wrestling action figures. These are in that same scale. They have Frankenstein's monster, Cthulhu, Nosferatu, and a zombie sailor, which is very cool. That is quite an interesting character to do. The reason we're talking about these is these are going to be heading on pre-order, I believe, very soon. So if you are interested in checking those out, these will go perfect again with your wrestling figures. Or if you want to have Frankenstein's monster fight He-Man, I think this would be the perfect size for that too.
Yeah. Is anybody else disappointed that Cthulhu's not green though? I don't know why. I always think of Cthulhu as green.
I think he
looks
is
fleshy,
but
is he?
I don't know if for some reason I don't think the paint has been completed on
Okay.
on these
Okay. Yet. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, if he's green, I might actually get a little Cthulhu to put on my shelf because Cthulhu's great.
I appreciate he doesn't skip leg day,
Yeah.
It's just like totally jacked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is funny.
You got to have him stand right next to Skeletor, and they can show off their quads together.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Next up, we got some major action figure line coming out here from NECA. We have two big figures that have been discussed for a very long time that are finally seeing the light of day. First up, we have Prey. Not coming to Blu-ray because Disney doesn't want you to own their movies on physical media. They would rather have you buy the action figure. This is the ultimate NECA Prey from the 2022, right? Yeah.
Last year. Yep.
Hulu original film Prey. This is the Predator from that movie. Getting the full scale NECA ultimate treatment. This looks awesome. They've been crushing it with all of their Predator figures for a very long time. I think Predator is low-key one of the best action figure lines that you can probably get into, from the high scales from, NECA, or you can even go to Walmart has like these $8 figures that just look really cool for an $8 Predator action figure. These rule. I'm excited that this is getting an action figure. I'm hoping that a Blu-ray release is probably going to be coming around the corner if they're releasing action figures. Who knows? But the figure looks incredible.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. First glance, I thought you just put a still up of the movie. That's an excellent sculpt, great paint work. But that's typical of NECA. I feel like NECA is just always kind of knocking their stuff out of the park.
Yeah.
I mean, Prey was one of my favorite movies of last year, so I don't know. This one might have wound up on my shelf. Yeah.
I loved this movie, and I love the whole series. And I was a little bit mixed. My first reaction to the new face design once the mask came off, I think it was just that it was different. But the more I look at it, and just spoiler, this was one of the figures that I kind of like did some pre-scouting when I saw the show notes. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about this. So it looks great. It just looks so ferocious, and the design work comes through so nicely in the sculpt. You're absolutely right, Sam. It's just friggin' awesome.
Yeah. Oh man, that one's cool. That one's really cool.
Well, you know what else is pretty cool?
Yeah.
This one's insane. I think fans have been asking for this for a very long time. They've been kind of NECA's been knocking it out of the park with all of their action figures from The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and this is no exception. This is the dog from The Thing, which, if I'm understanding correctly from the pictures I've seen and the description on it, it's basically 7 or 8 figures in one, with how many different ways you can move some of the parts around. And this is on the screen right now, as you can see, just one figure that you can make out of this. Again, NECA is totally knocking these out of the park. This box, from what I've looked up, is going to be pretty much almost double the size of a regular NECA box. So make your shelf space accordingly with the rest of your John Carpenter's The Thing action figures. Yeah, these are incredible. Again, Sam, you talked about seeing the Prey action figure and being like, oh, that's a screenshot from the movie. Again, this kind of looks like a screenshot from John Carpenter's The Thing that we have on the screen right now. These rule. This is such a cool figure. I'm excited for The Thing fans to finally have this.
Yeah, feels like a long time coming for this one. I mean, it's such an iconic. I mean, it's an iconic piece of horror history. No horror fan doesn't know about the dog, even before I hadn't seen The Thing, because I held off on watching The Thing for such a long time because John Carpenter doesn't make movies anymore. So I saved some of his. But I knew about the dog from the start. Like, it's iconic. You got to be fucking kidding me. And like I don't know. Like, this movie is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
The possessed dog is great. The funny thing is I actually was watching The Thing earlier today. I had a bit of a John Carpenter day, so
kind of one of those comfort movies, right?
Yeah, which is a weird thing to say about a movie where pretty much everybody dies, but most of my comfort movies end that way. I remember when 2020 hit, and someone was asking me like, "Oh, what movies do you put on when you don't want to be bummed out?" And I was like, "Reanimator." And they're
Amen.
like, "What?"
Yes. Yeah, my wife and I went through the entire Friday the 13th series together because she had never seen them, and we thought, well, we're stuck inside a lot of the time, so let's just roll. And it was so much fun. So yeah, horror is comfort food.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
Sam, I don't know how you watch The Thing when it's like so nice outside in South Dakota for once, and you're sitting inside watching a gross, cold horror movie.
The irony was not lost on me. I followed it up with another grimy, dirty, dark one, Escape from New York, which I hadn't watched in a long time. Oh my God, that movie rules. Mm-hmm. That movie rules. All right. It's now that time of the show where I get to ask my favorite question. What are you guys doobie doing? What have you been doobie doing recently?
I haven't been doobie doing a lot in terms of watching horror movies. I think the only one I have is something all three of us I think have watched. I was watching, this would have been 2 weeks ago, watching The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. I watched Witchboard on there, the first half of the double feature. The second movie was The Devil's Reign. It was for, I am not going to try to pronounce it, but it is the halfway to Halloween holiday. Sam, go. Can you pronounce it? I'm going to make you pronounce it.
Walpurgisnacht? Is that what it was?
You better than that, what I would have done.
Okay. Because I was like, I don't even have the word in front of me. I remember Joe Bob saying it a lot.
I think Joe Bob listens to our show because he heard us talk about the remake of Witchboard.
Yeah.
And both of us said, hey, we need to watch this movie. We haven't seen it yet. Yeah. And literally,
later, Joe Bob played it.
The next Last Drive-In, Joe Bob plays it. He listens to our show. Hi, Joe Bob.
Hi, Joe Bob.
Witchboard, Sam.
I think
I'll let you be nice first.
Yeah, I was like, I kind of like this one. it was a perfectly good 3-star movie that I enjoyed quite a bit. I think I ended up giving it 3.5 actually. I think every movie benefits from having Joe Bob talking about it, because I really don't give bad ratings to movies that I watched on the last drive-in, even when Joe Bob himself does. So I don't know. I really liked Witchboard. I thought it was an interesting, I don't know, it's an interesting early entry in Ouija horror, which I'm kind of a sucker for. I don't know. None of the movies are really all that great, except for the one Flanagan did, but they all are kind of my jam. So yeah, Witchboard kind of ruled. I'm very excited to see what Frank Darabont does with his remake of this. I hope he just practical gores the hell out of it.
Not Frank Darabont.
Or not Frank Darabont. What am I thinking? Frank Russell. Is that what it is? Chuck Russell.
Chuck
Russell. Yes. Oh my God, what am I saying? Woo! It's been a week, guys. Yeah, Chuck Russell.
Yeah, I watched this one too. I don't ever make it to the second movie of Joe Bob. I usually pass out. In the case of the other movie that Sam will talk about from the latest episode of The Last Drive-In, Don't Panic, I made it halfway through that movie before passing out. Yeah. So Joe Bob, you need to start your show like an hour early. But Witchboard, I did not like this movie. I'm a huge fan of Night of the Demons, which is director Kevin Tenney's other kind of cult classic from that era. Cult classic in terms of 80s kind of party horror movie. Night of the Demons rules. It's a ton of fun. It's super campy. I don't think this one has enough of that campy elements to it in Witchboard. I was kind of bored unless Joe Bob was talking, and I don't like that in a Last Drive-In movie. I was just waiting for Joe Bob, whereas I like a good balance between like, oh, this movie is a ton of fun. I want to hear Joe Bob talk about how fun it is for 10 minutes. Instead, I was like, no, I'd rather hear Joe Bob talk about the history of witches instead of a movie about a witchboard. I didn't like it very much, but maybe the remake will be better. But that's all I've been doing, Sam. That is literally all I've been doing. And then I watched half of Don't Panic until I fell asleep during the last.
You missed the best half of it.
I watched a not Alex Winter run around in PJs for 40 minutes. I think that I watched enough of it.
Well, I did finish the double feature the night of Witchboard deliriously, and after about, I don't know, probably 5 cups of coffee. So I don't remember a whole lot about The Devil's Reign because I was fighting with every ounce of my being to stay awake through most of it. But the finale was appropriately goopy. I had a really fun time. The practical effect that they wove into the episode with the Joe Bob and Darcy stuff was really fun. So yeah. Doug, did you watch the Witchboard Devil's Reign double feature?
I did, and
did you make it through the whole thing?
It's a purposeful thing. I only watch one of the films of the double feature, and then on Monday I give myself another treat, and I catch it on the stream on Monday. So it allows me to be awake and alert and try to like get the most out of it. But I thought, I'm kind of with you, Sam. It's hard for me to separate the experience of the movie from the experience of Joe Bob. So I've just got all these warm, fuzzy feelings about the whole thing because I'm a total sucker for Ouija horror, for Joe Bob, and for the history that they bring into it as well. And so it's hard for me to dissect my opinion of the movie out of that. I just have a great time with it. I love to live tweet through it and to see what the rest of the Mutant fam is saying about it. And so like Casey, there have been some times when I've been kind of like looking at my watch for some of the films. Then I just go to Twitter and, the fandom is at least having fun with the film. So I can laugh about that and kind of keep myself going. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it too, especially if the movie lulls. I feel like actually engaging in the social media aspect of it always. Yeah, I love that. we should tweet at each other this Friday, Doug.
Yeah, 100%. It's literally the only thing that I never ever miss. It's like church for me. I'm going to be there watching Joe Bob.
Yep, absolutely. So you definitely watched Don't Panic then, along with me, right?
Yes. You know, that one wasn't great, but I did appreciate the dino pajamas, and just like the absolute insanity of it. You know, it was a mashup of so many better things.
It was like Evil Dead meets Nightmare on Elm Street meets the production value of The Room.
Yeah, exactly. And so I will never understand those toddler pajamas on what is clearly a grown man. But that
and he's
for
even
me was part of the fun
in the movie.
Yeah, and obviously the dude was coming up on 30 in real life, and so it was just nothing was right about what was going on here, and I don't know. I can kind of get into that.
let alone his race car posters he had all over his room too.
Yeah, and then he just destroyed, you know, all of it and said, "I am not crazy."
Because that's always how you convince people that you're not, right?
Exactly.
Destroying your room full of Lamborghini posters.
So, you know, in light of everything I remember about it, it stuck with me. So, you know, there's that. My headphones came out because I'm gesticulating. I'm doing the Italian thing. So
I'm going to highly recommend both of you watch an episode of Best of the Worst from Red Letter Media, because they covered Don't Panic on it, and it is hilarious to watch those guys react to especially him wearing the dinosaur pajamas for the entire movie.
Yeah. I walked away from it kind of loving it, in that, like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I kind of want to invite a bunch of people over and just watch it and laugh, you know, because I mean, I'm a sucker for bad movies. I really am. And something that is that much of a massive, like, what were they doing kind of movie, I'm just like, yeah, I'm in. I loved it. Unironically, it was a blast start to finish for me. It wasn't good at all, but oh my gosh, I was never not entertained by it.
Yep. And I just love the Joe Bob curated experience where he's like, you probably would not have watched this film but for Joe Bob, but here it is for consideration, and here's why, and here's how it fits into everything. That's a cool experience. It's like, you know, wine tasting. You know, you're not going to be into everything, but you're glad you did it at the end, you know?
Yeah, sometimes the wine is necrotic. And I dug it. It was cheap wine, but it was I thought it was good. I was like, I would drink this. It was a perfectly good boxed wine for a Friday night where I'm just like, what the hell?
That's right. You know, speaking of Shudder, have you guys seen the Boulay Brothers Halfway to Halloween special?
I've not watched that yet. I'm so excited to.
It's bonkers. And like, I watched it and I was kind of feeling under the weather, so I had like a low grade fever, and it was sort of like the ultimate fever dream experience. So that's another thing that I caught. It's out there. It's like Pee-wee's Playhouse levels of weird, but like super gory.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's something else I've been doing lately.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I've been meaning to get to that one, and it's only like 45 minutes, so I really don't know how I haven't, because I love I love their drag show. It's great.
It's great. And I actually they've got I did not listen to Twin Temple before that show. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's Satanic Doo-Wop. It's friggin' awesome. And so
Okay.
they did a musical number in the show, and then I bought the record because they were so good. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's
Wow.
a pretty cool takeaway.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love when like, I'm a big fan of like German bands that take like American. I just found this band called the Boss Hoss that's been around for like a couple decades now, but they're a German band that do like American country and Western, but they infuse it with like German pop, and it's crazy.
Yes.
It's really cool. Like, so yeah. The only other thing I've been doing is I've still been watching Yellow Jackets. They took a week off for some reason. Don't take a week off. Just please give me more. The last episode that I talked about, I said had a very darkly humorous ending. In light of this last episode, I no longer find the ending of the last episode darkly humorous as much as I find it utterly haunting. So yeah, this new episode kind of like rips your heart out and then stomps on it a little bit, and then it says be on your way, and you're like, okay, but I'm gonna be back next week. So that's the Yellow Jackets experience, I guess. Doug, have you been watching Yellow Jackets?
No, my wife has, and I'm kind of saving it for when there's just a huge batch of it that I can just binge. And once the narrative arc has been, I'm a bad fan that way, because it's like I should be up on the front to drive numbers, but I kind of sit back and wait till there's, a bingeable amount. And so I will be visiting.
It's less painful that way.
Yeah. Because I think, it's so many times it's like they'll do a season of something great and then it'll get canceled. And, I'm hoping that there's a good finale to this, so that I can just, all right, I'm going to set aside a couple of weeks and I'm going to just dig into this, because I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's very good. I've been bugging Casey to get on it. But yeah, it's my favorite thing that I'm watching currently. I love Yellow Jackets. I get very excited every Friday when there's a new episode. So yeah. Doug, have you been doing anything else?
I recently caught Deadstream on Shudder.
Yeah.
Shudder is the gift that keeps on giving. So you both saw that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties in with this episode, because at some point you realize, and I'm going to pause for spoilers, but at some point you realize this is a stealth Evil Dead flick.
Yeah.
It just is. It's an Evil Dead flick, and it's fun all the way through, but once it hits that extra gear, it's like, just hook it to my veins. Fun.
Yep. Oh yeah. I actually just recently rewatched that one with my girlfriend, because I had no idea if she'd like it or not. I was like, but this is like one of the most fun movies I saw last year. Like, we got to check this out. And she liked it right up until about the last like 10 minutes. And then when it started like really like going all rocky on the gag reflex, that was when she was like, okay, I think I'm done with this. I was like, I understand that. I totally understand that.
Yep. It's at that point when my wife Jess watches horror movies with me, but at a certain point the hands go up over the eyes, and I say, okay, then now it's a talkie. It's not a movie anymore. It's a talkie.
Yep, for sure.
Deadstream was one of the biggest examples of there's two type of people that watch horror movies. Whereas I was watching it with my wife and my buddy Dakota, and he's sitting he hates horror movies, and he's sitting on the couch, scrunched up, ears plugged, eyes barely opened, watching Deadstream, and here I'm maniacally laughing at everything going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of I watched it alone, but I was cheering and talking to myself, and like I'm pretty sure at some point I was like, holy crap, this is an Evil Dead flick. I said to no one in particular.
Yeah. I'm glad to know I'm not the only person that does that, because I talk during movies all the time, even when I'm by myself. Yeah. And when I'm with Casey, I think I annoy him sometimes when we're watching.
No,
movies.
You're fine. Especially for something like Deadstream, you have to react to it. If you're not reacting, you're You're the weirdos that walked out of our Evil Dead 2 or Evil Dead
Yeah,
Rise
Evil Dead Rise
screening.
So funny.
Well, I'm going to use that as our
yeah.
I'm going to use that as our transition to our
Yeah.
main topic, since we talked about the kind of found footage live stream Evil Dead that is Deadstream. Let's jump into our main topic then for this episode. We're going to be talking 2013's Evil Dead and 2023's Evil Dead Rise. We're going to kick things off as we do when we talk about any new horror movie. We're going to save that discussion for last. So if people have not watched it yet, they will have a chance to still watch the movie. Is it streaming at home already, or is that just Renfield and
just
Pope's
Renfield
Exorcist?
and Pope's Exorcist?
So
Evil Dead Rise is not at home.
By the time this episode drops, it might be at home.
It might be, but it's also making bank like those movies didn't.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So, I don't know, but I can't wait for this one to be at home. Spoiler alert.
So we'll give a full spoiler warning when we get to Evil Dead Rise again, but spoiler-filled discussion on both of these movies. Let's kick things off with 2013's Evil Dead. I'm going to read off our plot for this movie here. You all know the story. A group of early 20-somethings go to a cabin in the woods as a retreat for their friend entering drug rehab, because that's what happens in all of these cabin in the woods movie. Actually, no, none of them talk about drug rehab. This isn't your dad's Evil Dead, as a Deadeye unleashes hell on the group on the group, including flesh burning, tongue cutting, cheek scalping, arm tearing, and blood rain by the end of this. This is the 2013 Evil Dead. The movie stars Jane Levy, Shiloh Fernandez, Jessica Lucas, Lou Taylor Pucci, and Elizabeth Blackmore. It was released April 5th of 2013. It is written by Fede Alvarez, and it is directed by Fede Alvarez. This is the remake, sequel, reboot, all of the above of the original Evil Dead from Sam Raimi. So let's talk about this movie. Let's talk about our first time watching Evil Dead. Doug, what was your first time watching this? Did you watch the 2013 movie in the theater?
I actually did. I was extremely excited to go, but just because I'm a huge fan of the series, and I was not disappointed. I remember loving the energy of it. I mean, it takes all of that manic camera work, although not quite to the extreme of it like an Evil Dead 2. But like the Dutch angles, the darkness, the cellar. So many of the elements, but sort of slightly remixed. It was just very, very well done, and a really nice reintroduction into the franchise, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did not watch this one in theaters, so I'm a recent Evil Dead convert. Like from, I don't know, what year did we meet, Casey? Because that's the year I started watching like all the Evil Dead movies, and I fell in love with them instantly. 2020, wasn't it? It was like literally right after the pandemic hit that we connected. Yeah. So yeah, 2020. That was kind of my coop up series where I'm like, I'm here. I'm gonna watch all these, and I'd seen bits and pieces of the 2013 one, but I hadn't watched the whole thing until like a couple of years ago. And this one, like when I first watched it, I was like, this is not for me. Like I'm just not into it. It wasn't tonally what I was expecting. And like, you know what I mean? It's a different flavor than the first three. And I think coming off of those and then going into this, it was like hard left turn. And I just didn't turn with the movie. I've watched it twice since. And every time I've liked this movie a little bit more. And I have a feeling that through conversation today, this might actually end up being something that I don't know. I'm interested to talk about this one because, like you said, Casey, the drug rehab element of it is like something you don't see a lot in horror movies, especially like Cabin in the Woods horror movies. And Jane Levy's performance just keeps growing for me. Like I'm just like, God, she's really freaking good in this movie. And between those two things, I kind of feel like this is becoming maybe not a favorite of the franchise, but I'm at least starting to see what people are like. Yeah, this is one of the best horror remakes that we have. I'm starting to get there, you know?
Yeah, the first time I watched this, I didn't watch this in the theater, and I looking back at the year it came out, 2013. It's kind of crazy I didn't, because I was seeing like every new horror movie, especially one aimed at people like teenagers. It was kind of crazy that I didn't watch this. I watched this a few years later. I was in a hotel with a buddy, and we caught literally the last 15 minutes of it with the blood rain.
The best
And I was
part.
like, oh, why have I not watched this yet? This is incredible. So I immediately went to Walmart that was across the street from the hotel we were staying at and purchased Evil Dead 2013 to watch it when I got home. And I did. And then I really liked it. And kind of like Sam, I grow more and more on this movie every time I watch it. Even a few episodes ago, I already gave my rating on it. I said it was a 5-star banger. It is a 5-star banger. I think it's one of the greatest remakes of all time, if you want to call it a remake, no matter what genre. I think it's up there with John Carpenter's The Thing. It's up there with The Fly. It's up there with Peter Jackson's King Kong. It's one of the best remakes of all time, in my opinion. And the reason I think it holds up so well is because the DNA of this movie is that of Evil Dead. It is the original, especially the original Sam Raimi movie, but it is updated. It has its own spin on it. Fede really takes a lot of chances with this movie, which I find super interesting. Obviously Jane Levy is incredible in this movie. She is the perfect balance to what Bruce Campbell was in the original 3 movies. And seeing her as like, I love the biggest thing I love about this movie is taking the concept of, the girl gets possessed by the Deadite and then begins killing all her friends, and we have to have the hero at the end take her out. Well, this movie's like, no, the Deadite is the hero after all. And I love the metaphor that it uses with her going through drug rehab. I think that is perfectly intertwined, even if you're not expecting it right away, especially for a movie called Evil Dead and the marketing that was behind this movie of like, oh, this is really just a movie about someone going through withdrawals and trying to find their place in the world and trying to come out a different person, a better person on the other half. Well, like someone's cutting their tongue with a box cutter and ripping their arm off and shoving a chainsaw into someone's face. It has all that stuff too, but at the heart of it's about someone trying to better their life.
It's a splatter movie with depth.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is, Evil Dead 2, I think, might have been the first soft reboot / sidequel I've ever seen, because it's not like Evil Dead. You both know Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are kind of the same movie, but just kind of done better.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the Oldsmobile, and this is very clearly happening in the same universe, it seemed to be so much in the tradition of what Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and the whole team were doing with Evil Dead 1 and 2, just sort of sending a message that this is going to be a remix, and it's deliberately going to challenge some of the expectations of the things that you've seen before. Sort of like Joe Bob says, sure, you've seen it before, but have you seen it with X, Y, and Z? And that's sort of the approach that was taken. And I just thought it was extremely clever. I'm with you, Casey. I think it's one of those remakes, reboots that's absolutely essential, right up there with John Carpenter's The Thing. I think that what's cool about what the remake does is it's almost like this is the film that Sam Raimi thought he was making with the first one, but just didn't have the resources to do it. Because you don't really start getting into the humor aspect of it until about halfway through Evil Dead 2, and then it really ramps up. But the first one, a lot of people think of Ash as this one-liner machine, but he's just a dude that's caught in a horrible situation in the first one. And so I think you were right. The DNA of this is all over the remake for that reason.
Yeah. So here's Casey knows I have some like hot takes around the Evil Dead franchise. So like the first Evil Dead is still my favorite Evil Dead. I don't know what it is about it. It just like, I think it's the DIY punk rock attitude that movie was made. It's not as good as Evil Dead 2. I agree that Evil Dead 2 was made better.
Yeah.
I pop on the first one before 2 almost any time. So it's one of those weird things for me. But that said, you're right. Like this one with 2013, it does kind of feel like, because there's no humor in this one. I mean, it's a pretty pitch black movie. Like it's pretty serious. I've used the word dour to describe it, and I don't necessarily disagree with that word, but I may have used it too harshly in the past. Because the last time I watched this, which was actually yesterday, I actually had kind of a bit of fun watching it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because I finally knew what to expect. I was like, okay, this is what this movie is. And I went into it knowing. And like I walked away from it going like, yeah, it's still not like the cup of tea I'm going to pour first. But damn it if it isn't really like well done and really good and just has some really interesting ideas. And I definitely noticed on this watch a little bit more of the Raimi-isms, the Dutch angles. I think this thing is lit incredibly. Like the shadow work in this movie is, I don't know, it's intense. The body horror, there's some like Cronenberg level stuff in this one where I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, and his name slips in my mind, but the character who originally reads the book, the sort of self-serious guy with the longer hair.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me the most about the most recent rewatch was how much abuse that guy takes through the film. Like he gets lit up over and over again. And I don't know if this might be a commentary on me, but like just the abuse that he goes through the film almost became funny in a really weird way. It's like I just kept thinking, like, what does the director have against this guy? Because like he takes it all.
I mean, and he does, and I too found it kind of funny, but in a you kind of deserved it way,
right?
Because he's the idiot that literally reads the text that says in red, like right next to it in red letters, "Do not read this," and he goes and he reads it out loud, and I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, you're the one that's going to get, put through the most because you're the reason this is all happening.
Well, and he was sort of the mansplainer earlier on in the film. That's like, we really need to do this, and this is the way we need to do it. And then he just totally screws the pooch for everybody.
Yeah. He's a character, like my first couple times watching, I didn't like, and I didn't like him on the third time, but at least on the third time, I was kind of like, I don't like this character, but I'm kind of enjoying, like, in a weird, sick way, like watching him get his due because come on, man, like, what are you doing? You're reading the Necronomicon, of course. I don't know.
Yeah. The opening of this movie I want to talk about, because the opening of this movie is a tone setter in every sense of the term, because if you're going into this and you're like, okay, yeah, I love Evil Dead. Sure, the first one is kind of this low budget, but it's still having a lot of fun with its practical effects. Evil Dead 2 goes crazy. Army of Darkness obviously is a medieval Three Stooges movie. And then you go into the 2013 one and you're like, oh, cool, they're remaking Evil Dead. And you walk into this, in the first 5 minutes, someone is burning basically at the stake because they're a Deadite. It is not what you expect. It is a dour opening, to steal Sam's term earlier. There's also some weird, like, body horror, body mutilation in the beginning of the movie too. That's like, oh, we haven't really seen this in an Evil Dead movie before. We've seen the Deadites, and especially like their eyes and the makeup that they use for all the Deadites, but we haven't seen something this dark before. What do you guys think of the opening of this movie in terms of it setting the tone for the rest of the movie?
I love this opening but it's definitely also indicative of the reason that I don't pick this movie up as much as the other ones. If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good, but it's almost too good at what it's doing to where I'm just like, oh, I'm like you, Doug. I search for fun horror.
Right.
So yeah, no, the opening's great. It's shocking in ways that, like, it's even shocking watching it today. And I'm like, that's really hard for a horror movie to do. It's really hard for a horror movie to be so visceral and gutting still, like, a decade on, when we've seen so many other things, it's the same thing with, like, the Scream opening. Like, that's still terrifying somehow years later, and no one even has a landline anymore. So yeah, I love the opening of this movie.
I'm with you, Sam. I love the opening too. It's a lot. It's another one of those moments where I came back to it at a different part of my life. I've got 2 daughters, and so I was empathizing more with the dad, and just horrified and shocked, in a way that I was completely, it was out of my control. And so I mean, it's extremely effective. But again, going back to that DNA of the series, the Deadites get to you through the people that you love, whether it's your wife, Henrietta, or whether it's your girlfriend who you've got to kill with a chainsaw and chop up, or whether it's your sister. And so that sort of familial, the through line, again, I think it was tipping a cap to that. And I thought, but in a way that is, we're not screwing around at all. Like, there's not going to be any dance number in the forest before the chainsaw happens. It's not going to happen.
Oh, this movie could have used a little bit of a dance number, though, right?
Yeah. Just a little musical number to get you tapping your toes right before,
This
Right
could have had
before
a severed
Bread Knife
hand
goes
flipping the bird to someone in this movie.
Yeah. That would have actually fit tonally, I feel like.
Yeah.
So not to plug my stuff again, but that is one that's one of the sources of the name Bad Hand Books, is Ash's hand that went bad. And so it's very much tied up in the mythos of what we're talking about. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to put that detail in there.
That's awesome. See,
we
didn't even know that. That's
we
just
didn't.
like a thing that we were like, we just knew Doug was going to be our Evil Dead guy.
That's right. I guess I was, it was destiny.
Yeah.
I'm gonna piggyback off that with the humor of the Sam Raimi movies, and to something Sam said, where he said this movie is not very funny. I disagree. I think it's kind of funny in a very, very dark way. It is funny, especially the end of this movie. I'm having a blast in the third act of this movie. I'm going nuts as soon as, like, it is super dark, like especially like a brother having to bury his sister, like just to rid her of a deadite, of an evil force.
That scene puts a pit in my stomach.
It does. Fun fact on that: I was looking through the IMDb trivia, and I have some more to talk about later. But apparently, Jane Levy was actually buried for that scene.
Wow.
Just to, like, obviously certain parameters were there and precautions and stuff, but to get the full effect of the scene, she was buried.
Between Don't Breathe and this movie, that girl is a trooper. Like, she is one of our best Scream queens. She's so good.
Fede likes to put her through the shit, doesn't he?
Yeah. Like, for real.
What's crazy though is that this is Fede's first feature film. After Sam Raimi and co. discovered him through a short that he did that was basically like, it was kind of like a special effects, extravaganza for this short. And he goes into this movie, and this movie doesn't have a whole lot of the CGI, and it uses it where it needs to, but the practical effects in this movie are nuts. It's insane. And that's kind of a hallmark of the Evil Dead series now, through, the original movies, this movie, Rise, and the TV show, Ash versus Evil Dead. The practical effects in this movie, I think, are probably the grossest. And I think the one it reminds me of is in the original movie is getting the pencil in the in the foot. It's like that's like every gore effect in this movie, from someone cutting their tongue, cutting their cheek with the glass. Like, it's just everything that grosses you out is in this movie.
Yeah, the bread knife scene is the one that I always go back to. Like, that scene is insane. Just when you think it's not gonna make it, you know, you're like, there's no way that tiny bread knife's gonna cut through that arm, and then it does, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, when it hits bone, it's just like, yeah. That's the moment I just cringe every time.
Yep. Oh man. And it's not the only arm that gets ripped off in this movie either, and that's gross too.
I was just gonna say, Mia's arm at the end of this movie gets me, because you see like tendons and stuff.
Yeah, the
off.
Ligaments and stuff, they stretch a little bit first, and you can't get that with CG. It's you got it. Like, you can tell there's a real thing there, and it's totally convincing.
Oh yeah, practical effects. Like, I mean, I feel like that's the hallmark for Evil Dead in particular. And I'm so glad that they didn't go like the Fright Night 2011 route, because I love that movie, but it's one of those movies that takes a practical effect classic and slathers CG over it, and it's like, would have been a little bit, like, your story, your acting, everything was good, but it just needs that practical effect to like bump it up more. And that's what Evil Dead 2013 has in spades, is that practical gore. And the Deadites look terrifying in this. Like, the abomination when it rises up out of the ground after the blood rain. Yeah.
That's one thing I'm loving. No slight spoilers for Evil Dead Rise, that the quote unquote final boss of these last two movies especially have been like, what's the craziest thing we can think of, and how cool can we make that look practically? Both of them knock it out of the park.
But thematically coherent as well, because she kind of does the battle with herself, and spoiler, the final girl in Evil Dead Rise does battle with her entire family at once. So yeah, it's really tight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, like, the idea of your drug-addled self being the demon that you're then, I mean, chainsawing in half. Like, I don't know. As someone who has definitely like struggled with certain things in life, it's like, the metaphor just hits on a different level. And I don't know. Every time I watch this movie, like, it's weird to say this movie moves me a little bit, but it does. Like, that final moment is awesome in like the pump your fist, rah, rah kind of way. But it's also like, oh shit, this is cool. Like, she is defeating her actual demons. If only all of our demons would just come out of the ground right in front of us, and we could just chainsaw them.
Right. But isn't it cool too that she doesn't get away unscathed? You know, she's forever changed. She doesn't just get better. She pays a price for it.
Oh yeah.
I think it's this movie is emotionally the most satisfying Evil Dead movie. I mean, the first three, I don't know what emotion you can really connect to it besides like having a ton of fun. It's not like you're gonna be like, oh no, what's gonna happen to Ash? It's like, yeah, go get him, Ash. Evil Dead Rise has more of it, but I think this one especially, I think Mia is one of the strongest characters in this entire franchise, and there's a reason fans, including us, have been clamoring like, all right, let's bring back Mia for the next one. Let's see her, you know, the next chapter in her, you know, evolution.
Yeah. I would love to see Jane Levy actually return in a sequel. And I think, honestly, it's going to happen. I feel like they've seen enough fans, like, more, especially after this new one, where they're like, oh, we could do a team up now. It'll happen.
Let's talk after Rise. I think we can get into full spoilers there and talk about what's next for Evil Dead.
For sure.
I have like a couple IMDb trivia things to throw out here before we wrap our discussion on the 2013 Evil Dead. 50 to 70,000 gallons of blood was used for this movie.
Yeah,
That's a lot of blood. Diablo Cody helped polish the script for this movie because Fede Alvarez did not speak very much English at the time and kind of beefed up some of the dialogue in the movie, which
Nice.
I think you can kind of see some of that in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And Gillian Jacobs and Lily Collins both auditioned for the role of Mia, which this would have been, I think, a bit of... I don't know how I would feel about it. I like both of those actresses, but I think this is Jane Levy just knocks it out of the park. I can't see anyone else playing this role.
Yeah, but I'm also a massive Community fan.
I am too.
And I would love to see Gillian Jacobs do something this crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. I did not know that.
Also, Bruce is there after the credits. That we should just throw out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Groovy.
Yeah, he gets to say
it. Final thoughts from you two. What would you give this movie out of 5 chainsaws? We're going to throw that out there. Chainsaws this time.
I'm not at a 5 chainsaw yet, but I think I'm at a 4 chainsaw. I think this movie will probably go up to 5 chainsaws like most of the other Evil Dead movies for me. Yeah, I really like this one. It is a very different take on Evil Dead. It might not be the first one that I'm picking up off the shelf, but I especially understand for people who were big fans of like this era of horror in particular. I could definitely see this being like an all-time classic for anyone like that. So yeah, I dig it.
Love it. 5 chainsaws out of 5. It's a wonderfully brilliant, bloody reimagining. And I love what I love the most is that they didn't try to put Ash back in any way. Like they didn't have somebody else try to play Ash or even an Ash-like character. They just charted their own path in this one, and it was so brave and so effective that I just can't help but give them all the accolades for it.
Yeah, 5 out of 5 chainsaws. This is one of the all-time great horror remakes of all time. It's going to go down as a classic, I think. Just like the original Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, I think it just fits in perfectly with the franchise. It is tonally different, but not outside the world that Raimi established 30 plus years earlier. I don't think it's out of the world, but it's just tonally a little different than the rest of the movies. Yeah. Also, one more thing. Rotten Tomatoes, which is, I don't know if I always trust Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to throw these numbers out there, though. Critics, 63%. Audience, 64%. I'm kind of shocked by the low critic rating for this movie.
I never am when it comes to like requels, sequels, reboots, that kind of thing, because those are always just so, especially today, are so divisive most of the time for the wrong reasons. But, I don't know. I think this one's also gotten a lot of reappraisal in the last decade since it's been out. Because I remember this one not being like an instant classic when it came out. Like there were people that were kind of like, I wasn't an Evil Dead head back then, but like I had friends who were, and it was just, some of them were pretty cool on it too, which is probably why it took me so long to even watch it, but yeah, I don't know. I think this one has gotten a reappraisal. I agree. I think this is a modern day classic.
Yeah.
So, it's a modern day classic because the critics are wrong. They hated The Thing as well, the remake of The Thing. So that's how for sure it's a modern classic. But the other part of it is critics just think about 2013 and all the water that's gone under the bridge when it comes to horror. Like The Shape of Water hadn't come out yet. It wasn't yet cool or acceptable to be a critically acclaimed horror movie. And since then, with Jordan Peele's influence, love what he's been doing to give the genre some more mainstream credibility. I think you release that movie today and people go bonkers for it. It's just, it was a different time different time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I would agree with that. I think between like A24 and Jordan Peele and this like new brand, like I don't want to say brand, but like this new, it's okay to be a critically acclaimed, and sometimes I kind of miss the like, okay, but it's okay to also just kind of be like a trashy horror movie too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
by the way, Shape of Water had a dance number.
it did, and it was tremendous.
I'm just saying, maybe that's the magical ingredient.
Yeah, horror movies with dance numbers.
More dance numbers in your horror movies.
That's
yes.
right. Okay, we cracked that code.
Yep.
Doug, I think your theory on the critical reappraisal of horror now, based on everything that's happened in the last decade, I think we're gonna bring that up again when we talk about Evil Dead Rise.
Oh, okay,
because I have those numbers too. But let's move on to Evil Dead Rise then. So full spoilers if you have not watched Evil Dead Rise, we're gonna spoil it right away. So throwing that out there, let's jump into it. So Evil Dead Rise is the story of family, motherhood, and cheese graters. Evil Dead Rise brings the Evil Dead mythos to an urban environment as an LA apartment becomes inhabited by deadites after a record player unleashes the demonic presence. Estranged sisters Beth and Ellie fight to keep their children, Ellie's children, Bridget, Danny, and Cassie, safe from the Book of the Dead. Evil Dead Rise stars Lily Sullivan, Alice Sutherland, Gabriel Eccles, Morgan Davies, and Nell Fisher. This was released just a few weeks ago, April 21st, 2023. It is written and directed by Lee Cronin.
Wonderful Irish bloke who I've been listening to on a bunch of podcasts recently.
Let's talk about that right away. Okay, I'm going to get my one major negative of this movie out right away.
Okay.
The accents in this movie aren't great. And I'm okay with that because I love horror movies, and acting is one of the last things I look at in a horror movie. The acting in the movie is great. The accents in this movie are noticeable. It's like, you guys are not American, and I can tell. It's not enough to take me out of the movie. It's enough for me to like point it out as, yeah, you guys aren't American.
So it's so funny because I've been hearing that same thing. Like, oh, the accents are terrible. I never noticed it in the movie. I think I was so in that I don't know. I don't notice that stuff though. When people talk about like waffling accents, it takes something like really bad for me to notice it because I just get so involved. I'm not a good critic, guys. I don't look at movies critically. I look at movies like, this is going to be fun. And I have fun with it. And yeah, I think my only gripe about Evil Dead Rise is that it isn't available at home already. That's my only gripe. I love this movie. It was, I texted Casey at one point this week. I've cooled my roll a little bit. Like, I know that like recency bias is a thing, but I told him at one point this week, I'm like, Evil Dead Rise might be my favorite Evil Dead movie. I think it's my second favorite Evil Dead movie, but this one really worked for me in a way that, like, I don't know. I just haven't stopped thinking about it since I saw it like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Doug, what did you think of this one?
It blew my socks off. And I'm kind of, I did notice the accents, and it wasn't really not even close to a deal breaker. But when someone isn't extremely practiced in a particular accent, or like if a British or Australian actor is playing an American, typically you hear it when they start to yell or they start to speak faster. And unfortunately in horror, and unfortunately in this particular film, you get a lot of that. But at the same time, when those moments hit, they're so emotionally fraught that it was easy to just give it a pass, because the performances themselves were ridiculously good. I mean, it was the emotional stakes for this film are probably the highest and tightest of any Evil Dead flick. And that is saying something when you look at the 2013 remake, where they're cranked up pretty tight there. But it was almost like a Game of Thrones situation where it was like, okay, you're not really gonna kill that person, are you? Yup.
Yeah, I was about to say the answer about 9 times out of the 10 times you ask that question is yes in this movie.
Yeah, I just found myself constantly just going, oh my, they did it.
Mhm.
They did it. I still haven't recovered.
Yeah, Casey and I had a couple of people walk out of our screening. The first time we asked, oh, they're not going to do that, and they did it.
Yeah.
We had people get up and walk out, and I was like, we were kind of laughing because this movie is really funny.
Kind of, Sam. I was going to say, Sam, kind of laughing. We were losing our minds.
Okay, yeah, we were. We were laughing.
When Stephanie is finally used in this movie, which is
so great.
Which is set up in the first like 15 minutes. When that finally comes into use, we're like, oh my god, they actually did that. 2, that is hilarious and so much fun. Not everybody in our theater thought the same. As apparently 4 people. Was it 4 people?
It was 4 people. 4 people walked out of our screening at that moment.
Oh my gosh!
Stephanie's scene. I was like, oh, it's gonna get so much worse for everybody. And I was like, and I was right. I mean, it did. Like Stephanie was the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I went at a really odd time. It was like a 12:30 matinee on a Friday, and so I was almost alone in the theater, but there was this group of women of a certain age, and they looked like
oh no,
they just like, I know I shouldn't have these snap judgments or preconceived notions because I get upset when people level them at me, but it was like a knitting circle came to Evil Dead. And I just like it wasn't that I was laughing at them, but I just thought, do you know what you're doing to yourself? And I wanted so badly to warn them, and I thought I was going to have one of those moments where, they would, but they stuck it out, and they were champs. Because I could hear them making comments, and they were like saying the things to each other that I was thinking. And so like by the end of it, my perception completely changed. And I thought, I need to have a beer with these ladies because they freaking rock.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like, it made my movie going experience like way up.
Oh yeah. I love when I've had that before where you have a group come in to a movie and you're like, oh, come on. Like, really?
Mm-hmm.
And you try not to. I agree. You try not to have the preconceived notions. And then they prove you wrong anyways. And you're like, yeah, preconceived notions are bullshit. Like,
yeah.
You people rule.
Yeah. I wanted to high five, I was like, I don't want to be awkward, but you're cool.
Yeah. Don't you want to just like meet everybody at a horror screening sometimes?
Yeah.
Just like, especially like a good crowd where like everybody, it's just like, okay, what's everybody's name and number? Like, we should all hang out.
The bad thing about like going to horror movies around here sometimes, at least for me, is like I'm the one in the back like cackling at all the crazy shit going on. Like we went to Terrifier 2 and there's that scene in Terrifier 2 and I'm losing my mind in the back row and no one in front of us is reacting at all. I'm like, how are you just not reacting to this? At least Evil Dead wise, we had reactions throughout the entire movie, including people leaving, someone yelling at the screen, oh no, don't do that. A couple times.
No, I think one of those times actually might have
been you.
I'm terrible. Sometimes I forget I'm in a movie theater and I'll like talk to the character. I'll be like, no. And I'm like, sorry.
Guys, we have to talk about the opening of this movie because the opening of this movie is incredible. I love the drone shot going through the woods like the OG Sam Raimi shot, and just the reveal of it being a drone. I'm like, yes, I like that. You guys know what you're doing in this, and kind of subverting our expectations and also letting us know like, hey, we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. The opening of this movie, and this might be one of my favorite title card reveals of any horror movie.
Any movie.
Or any movie too, but horror movies especially, like you don't always think of like great title card openings to a horror movie. This one has one of the best ever. It is incredible. It is a piece of art of its on its own.
Yeah. Like, I mean, people have been sharing that screenshot all over, and I'm just like, yeah, it's gorgeous. It's incredible. Also, the drone thing was really cool. I just want to go back to the drone real quick, because the entire time we were going through the forest, I was sitting there going like, the camera works too smooth. Why is it not shaky cam? Like, I get that, you know, they're going through the woods and all. I'm like, no, this is too smooth. Like, what? The technology has made it too much. And then when they reveal that it's a drone, I was like, hell yeah. Okay, they know what they're doing, because when they bring back the demon at the high rise, it's the shaky cam again. And I was like, that's a nice touch. That's a really nice touch that they did that. I appreciated it. So.
And I love the whole movie just sort of reminded me of, you know, when you have the torture scene in a movie and the guy who comes in and he rolls out his little cloth and it's got all the tools. Like that's what Lee Cronin did, but at movie scale. So it's like you see the drone, you realize it's a drone, you're like, oh shoot, like that's going in somebody's face. And sure enough,
even make the comment,
yeah. Or
you could have taken my head off or something.
Yep. Or like Stephanie. Yeah. It's like, okay. So he lays out the tools, and you just know, like, and it eats at you until it happens. And it's just a masterwork of, here's what I'm going to do to you, but I'm going to make you wait for it. It's just so good. I know I'm gushing, but like, there are so many moments in the film where he's like, all right, here's the thing that's going to torture you. You don't know how it's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen, but stuff's going down. And then it does, and it's so satisfying.
Yeah. It's great. And gush away. This is what we do on this show.
This is going to be fully gushing from now on in this movie. I had so much fun watching it. And like you said, Doug, he lays out every single thing in this movie. And some people, I've been hearing people saying that as a negative. I'm like, how is that a negative? Sure, it's like letting you know what's going to happen, but it's like, you already know what's going to happen. You're watching a movie called Evil Dead Rise. You know crazy shit's going to happen. Why not have fun with teasing us on what's going to happen? Yeah, I mean, with Stephanie, with the drone, with the cat in the vents, you have
which, thankfully, I mean,
he makes the right call on the cat. Yeah,
the cat lives, and I appreciate that. Or at least we don't ever see the cat die, and I appreciate that. I hate when they kill the cat.
You get the image of the wood chipper. You get the garage door opener. Like, there's so much stuff set up in this movie that Lee does so well on paying off by the end of it. It is perfect screenwriting for this type of horror movie. It is a thrill ride from the beginning to the end, and you're going to have a blast watching it. Whereas I think this movie does have a lot more fun with itself than the 2013 movie, but it still is like punching you in the face with like how dark, and it, like both of you said, it goes there throughout this entire movie.
Yeah. It's mean. And I love that Lee Cronin's just like, why have one Chekhov's gun when I can just put like 6 in here? Like, because it's not just like it's not like Alfred Hitchcock's bomb in a box that no one knows about. It's like the whole place is wired to explode. I love it. It cranks it up to 11 in the best way. And when you look at the cast of characters, and a majority of them are under 18, the first thing you think is like, oh man, this is going to be like it's going to be a little Spielberg, right? Where it's like, it's Jurassic Park. The kids are just going to be safe. And it just proves you wrong almost instantly. As soon as you start thinking that, it's like, no.
And I just can't, I keep going back to that. I just couldn't believe that they just kept on putting the hammer down the way that they did. And the thing that I noticed about this one that was different, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like once you're a Deadite, Deadite in this film, that's it for you. Like
Yeah.
Mia went back and forth, Ash went back and forth, but like once it has you in this film, you're toast. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was something that was, I sort of expected, like, maybe the mom's going to come back and she's going to have this moment where, oh, I do love my family. I have time for them. And no.
No. It's a dark movie, and the ending they kind of like try and like make the ending like a little bit hopeful in a way, and it's a nice touch, but I'm also like, no, those people are irreversibly scarred. Like that little girl is never gonna be the same again.
Yeah.
Like she killed her own sister with Stephanie. She's gonna be like messed up for the rest of her life.
She helped put her mom and brother and sister through a wood chipper as they were a deformed society looking deadite.
The shunting.
Okay. Yeah, it had to have been a society riff, right?
100%.
Like, Lee Cronin definitely was like, yeah, we're gonna do a deadite shunting.
It'd be a great name for a band, Deadite Shunting.
Deadite shunting.
Oh man.
I love in this movie the setup of, obviously we have in all of these movies someone reading from the Book of the Dead, from the Necronomicon. Deadites get unleashed. That's kind of just like, you need that in your Evil Dead movie. I like that this is like this condemned old falling apart apartment complex in LA, and underneath it is this like cellar with the third Book of the Dead and these records. Someone took time to press
Jesus.
And a scary Jesus. Someone took time to press these records on like, hey, don't read this book, but we're gonna press these records to make sure you don't read this book.
Don't read this book, but here's us reading this book.
Here's us
pressed
reading
on
the book.
vinyl.
Yeah. I like that vinyl was the thing being used, though. I think that's a clever way to bring it up to the modern day, which is kind of weird to say, hey, let's have someone play a record and that's the most modern thing you could do, but it is. No one's going to have the tape player Ash used in the original movies. So let's bring it up to modern day. And again, it allows for so many great scares too with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And what's cool too is like it's a 75, which they don't make record players for anymore. So that's why the kid has to actually like spin it on his finger to get the right rotation. And I'm just like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just made it a 33, and no one's going to make, like, the amount of detail that goes into everything is so insane in this. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
sorry, Casey.
Question for the group. Oh, sorry. Let's go back to Casey first.
I feel like I interrupted you, Casey.
No, you are fine.
Okay.
You are fine.
Okay. So I've got a question for the group. So they make a reference to the 3 books of the dead, the 3 Necronomicon. And so are we talking about the original one from the Raimi series, the one from the Alvarez film, and then this one? Those are the 3?
Yes.
Yep. And Cronin has actually gone on, I think it was post-mortem with Mick Garris. He confirmed that. And he said he went to Raimi with that idea. He's like, yeah, I think it was like Army of Darkness. Ash finds 3 books, right?
Yep.
And so like in the universe, there's 3 Necronomicons already established. And so I think Cronin actually went to Raimi and said, hey, you have one. Alvarez has one. Let me make the 3rd one. And I think that's really cool. His might be my favorite Necronomicon too, just because of how nasty it is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's got teeth. I love that. The teeth are the best. Like, such a cool, I don't know. Yeah. See, this is what we do, Doug. We gush on this podcast.
Especially if it's Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I love that this movie and just kind of the internet talk of 2013 is like establishing that all of these movies take place in the same universe, and that Ash gets his own, Mia has hers. Now we get the 3rd Book of the Dead, and maybe we'll get the crossover. I don't know. We can talk about that. Oh, let's just talk about it right now. We'll pause our discussion on the actual goopy gore filled movie to discuss this, but I think that we're going to get the crossover.
I want us to get a Beth and Mia, team up. And Then give Bruce Campbell like a cameo in the end, like Ghostbusters Afterlife, but better than that movie, please. You know,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Bring him back for a third act, like fun cameo thing.
Yeah, let this be his swan song, doing this big crossover with the 3 books finally kind of coming together. And I think that's kind of the way you can look at doing the next movie, is like having each of these characters get a third of the movie, and you end the movie with Bruce coming back, and there's this big climax, and it's all right. Now we're into the fun stuff, because both the 2013 one and this one, like really like amp up the craziness, Evil Dead 2 type of craziness in their third acts. If you're going to do another one with Bruce, let him be that third act craziness that you introduced.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to get at least a Mia and Beth crossover. Jane Levy has been doing press for this movie, and she has nothing to do with it at all. And it's like, why are you bringing her back if she's not involved with this?
Yeah.
Oh, it's to just get fans hyped. Hey, do you guys want to see this? We might do it. Here's her doing press on it. I think we're going to get at least that.
And the fans responded by making this movie $100 million at the box office, so it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I would love to see a road movie, like a Thelma and Louise, like meets Evil Dead, and then you get. I love the idea of bringing Bruce back in the third act, but you've got sort of like they're on this journey to they maybe don't have possession of their respective books, but they know where they are. And then they don't know what's going on with the third one, and there's only one guy in the universe who can put the nail in the coffin.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, when the WGA strike is over, you got to get on that. That's a great idea, man. That's awesome.
It's so easy. They just roll up to an S-Mart in the third act, and they come across this guy, just this old man working there.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think we just wrote the next Evil Dead movie, guys.
And as they come up into the S-Mart, like he's giving the rundown of the shotgun like he does in Army of Darkness, but he's selling it to like just a normal dude. Top of the line. S-Mart's top of the line.
And the guy's like, "Can I just buy it, please?"
Okay. See? Yeah. Let's just do it, guys.
Yeah.
All right, man. Sam Raimi, be on the lookout for our pitch for Evil Dead.
Evil Dead rolls.
Yeah. Oh man, shit writes itself, right?
Could happen.
Oh man, that's great.
Okay, to get back to this movie, I'm going to use a transition to my favorite scene of this movie. Is the homage to Evil Dead 2, where, so in the movie, the mom gets possessed. And again, I think a lot of people are talking about the line "mommies with the maggots" now. And hearing that in the movie, I'm like, that's gross. That's terrifying. I hate all that, yet I love it because it's perfect. But once shit starts to hit the fan, and there's that hallway scene where we're just looking through the peephole in the door.
And you just seems so good.
It's so good. All the craziness that goes on, and someone gets an eyeball shot into their mouth and they choke and die. I'm like, yes, thank you, Lee. You are clearly a fan of Evil Dead 2.
Did you guys know that that's the Bruce Lee or the Bruce? Oh my gosh, why am I messing up names today? Bruce Campbell cameo is in the eye bite. The sound, the ADR, is him biting an apple. It's Bruce Campbell biting an apple, and that's the sound of Alyssa Sutherland biting the eyeball out of that guy.
That is lovely, because she really like goes all mouth over that socket. That was maybe the most graphic eye bite I've ever seen. I mean, I haven't seen a ton of them, but ooh.
It was gross, and then she didn't even have the decency to eat it.
No, but I didn't know that. That's awesome. So he got like the vocal cameo, like a Bugs Bunny cameo, eating carrots but eating an apple.
Exactly.
I just love that Bruce is probably hanging out in the editing room for this, and like, hey, where can I help out?
Yeah.
which is
Some
such a
guys just like bite this apple.
it's such a Bruce thing to do, because that's what he did on the original trilogy too. He's like, he helped with everything Raimi did after they finished production too. So it's nice to see Bruce is still just like, yeah, where can I help? Eat this apple in front of this microphone, Bruce.
He's a team player. He's a team player, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Had no idea. That's cool. Now I want to see it again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It should be available at home already. I'd spend $30 just to own this digitally. just give it to me early, Warner Brothers.
To go back to some of the gore, I want to talk about the kitchen scene with the cheese grater, because I've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff that Lee's been sharing. It's so good. It's such a great sequence of events of the oldest daughter just standing on the kitchen counter, just eating this wine glass, and it's so disgusting. And you see like the glass go down her throat, and it's like, oh, it's awful.
And then it pokes through, like, just a little bit.
And then it keeps moving. It's just, oh man. Yeah. And it's the whole like, I'm trying to kill the bugs in my stomach line. It's like, oh no. Oh my gosh. The lines that the Deadites have in this movie are all just bone chilling. Like none of them. I mean, I'm pretty sure one of them uses the C word, and that made me laugh, but it also sent a chill up my spine, because I'm like, oh, these Deadites they're just so mean to these kids. These literal children.
Oh, man. Yeah, and the cheese grater is iconic, and I think for the same reason that some of the other gore that we've touched on, like the hypodermic needle to the eye in the remake, just underneath there, it's like these things that everybody has. Not that I've taken a needle to the eye or a cheese grater to the calf, but like, have you ever been grating cheese and gotten too close and nicked your knuckle on that? Like, so it's something that everybody or most people can relate to. It's a horrible sensation, and then just amping it up to proportions.
Like seeing someone's skin like go through the grater like it is string cheese coming out the other end. It's so disgusting.
Like even if you don't know what that feels like, because you've nicked your knuckle on a cheese grater enough times, you know what it would feel like. And that's terrible.
Yep. And that's the beauty of the Evil Dead movies, I think, especially. And the first couple of Saws do this really well too, where they find things that it's like, you know what it's like to be poked by a needle. Well, what it'll be like to be poked by like 1,000 of them. And you're like, oh no, please don't. And then they do. And it's wonderful. And I show up and I give them my money for the mental torture of, oh God, why am I watching this? It's great. It's horror in a nutshell, right?
One of the scariest scenes is also involving that daughter for me. Of after she gets staphanied, they tie her up in the bed, and she's wearing this, white bed sheet, and she's all tied up, and you get this scene of like the little girl standing there, and you see the white sheet walking down the hallway, and it like floats at her. It is the stuff of nightmares in this movie. It is terrifying. It is something that will stick with you, along with the gore, is how scary a lot of this movie is.
Yeah. And it's claustrophobic too. I've heard a lot of people that are kind of disappointed that they didn't use the whole high rise. I'm like, it wouldn't work in a whole high rise. Then just watch Demons 2, Yeah. The whole high rise is like non-essential. You're living with this family who is now stuck up here because the elevator's out, the stairwell crumbled, and the only way out is through a locked apartment that they don't have a key to. They are trapped with a force of evil, and that's like, without that, there's no movie. They just leave the high rise. I love the fact that they take a big high rise, and the only reason they do it is to trap their characters in one specific part of it. It's like Crawl. It's literally all in a basement until, the last act, and then it's crazy. But that's the same thing with this one. They move out of the top floor eventually. but it's just it's nuts. It's that thing where you're just like, it's scarier when there's no escape. It's scarier when it's claustrophobic, when the walls are literally closing in on you. And that's something that Cronin totally takes to his advantage here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Casey, to your point about the image of the girl floating in the sheet, it's one of those things that should be stupid, right? It's like the most cliched, ooh, this is a ghost, right? Like that's what a ghost looks like in a movie. But it's done in such a way that it's absolutely bone chilling. And that's maybe my favorite part of it, because I had this moment of awareness where I'm like, this should be stupid, but I've got goosebumps. And that makes it even better, because it's sort of like, it's almost like an out of body experience where you're watching yourself react to something and you're saying, this shouldn't be getting to me, because I've seen it so many times before. But in the context, in the execution, it's so effective. And Lee Cronin is a genius for that.
Yep.
He is, you can tell Lee is a massive horror fan himself. One, because he is pitching to like Sam Raimi of like, hey, by the way, there's 3 books. There's 3 different directors that have worked on these. Let's combine it that way. That's such a nerdy thing to approach the producer about. I mean, it's at least it's Sam Raimi, so it's like, okay, yeah, he understands that. But there's so many other references in this movie. I mean, there's more references to Evil Dead 2 with them all chanting "Dead by Dawn" in the hallway, which is terrifying in this movie. There's a couple Shining references in this movie, including like the shot of like the hands on the door, and you get the shot from underneath, and then you get the blood elevator too. I mean, if you're gonna borrow elements, you might as well borrow from Raimi and Kubrick. Like that's those are 2 masters that you can definitely, lean into in your own movie and put your own little spin on it.
Yeah, and that's the best thing, is he doesn't just settle for borrowing. He takes it and he amps it up a little bit or twists it in his own way. The blood elevator in The Shining is a cool visual, but what if there were people trapped in that blood-filled elevator? I mean, it's little things like that that kick every sequence up a notch. There's also, he said he didn't want to give away too much of the magic trick, but apparently they tried to fill an entire elevator with blood. They tried it with water first instead of, expensive fake blood. But they just couldn't find a practical, safe way to do it with the stunt people in there. And so there are some really cool tricks that they used where it's just like boxes that are like clear containers that they're filling up with blood in front of a camera. And it's old school filmmaking, sure, but it was just like hearing him talk about how they did it. I was like, this is so cool. Like, it's so neat to hear the, like, I don't know. As someone like Casey and I both kind of dabble in, we're trying to get some film projects off the ground. As someone who's like in the indie film scene, it's cool to hear stories like that of like, oh man, if I want to fill an elevator with blood, I don't have to fill an elevator with blood. I can do this or this. There are like other options. And the way he kind of talked through, I'd really recommend his postmortem with Mick Garris. It's great because he talks about like all the different behind the scenes, the practical effects, and a lot of the conversations that went into the story behind this movie. And it's a pretty cool interview from a writer's perspective, from a filmmaker's perspective. There's a lot to dig in there. So
nice. Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to plug a different podcast on our own, but
no.
Mick is pretty good at the podcasting.
Yeah.
But I take your point. And it's really cool that, and inspiring that even somebody like Lee Cronin, who's got resources, has still got to get creative and do things in a way that not only works, but it's within budget and, keeps everybody safe. And there are these ways that you can force perspective to do it, not easy, not cheap, but like effectively, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because there's never a moment in that sequence where you don't believe those 2 characters are in that elevator about to drown in blood.
Yeah.
It's nail biting from the start to the end. And it's insane. It's so cool how movies, I mean, just art in general comes together. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was really cool.
I mean, he also took inspiration from the Disney classic Lilo and Stitch in this movie too, by having the mom put her finger on the record player and open her mouth to have it
Oh
speak.
my God, yeah, I
Stitch
forgot about that.
Stitch does that in Lilo and Stitch too.
Oh my
Yep.
god.
He does. Now I feel like we have to find Lee Cronin and ask him if that was intentional.
If he's a Lilo and
Like-
Stitch fan, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid who grew up, like, you know, Lilo and Stitch was a monster movie that was made available to me. I loved it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool.
Okay, let's talk about the final act of the movie in the parking garage. I had a ton of fun watching the final act of this movie. It was not what I was expecting at all going into the movie. I knew the chainsaw would come into play at some point because it's an Evil Dead movie. I was not expecting a society deadite at the end with the mom and the two teenagers combined into this gross giant monstrosity that's running around the car chasing after them. It's so gross. It's so visually interesting too, and it's not something we've seen in any other Evil Dead movie. What did you guys think of the overall ending, and especially like do they have a name for this monster yet?
I don't know if they've, because I heard a few people call it the Abomination, but I'm like, you can't call it the Abomination because that's the Jane Levy Deadite from the end of Evil Dead 13. So I don't know what we're gonna call this one, but like,
I read
I don't
that
know.
they called it the I don't remember where I read it, but I read that they called it the Marauder.
the Marauder.
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
So for whatever that's worth, yeah.
All right. Well, I think the Marauder's freaking sweet. I don't understand people who are like, oh, it kind of lost a little something for me when that happened. I'm like, as soon as they started doing the society bit, I was like, I'm in. This is cool. It's gross. It's something we haven't seen in an Evil Dead movie. It makes me want an Evil Dead like kaiju movie where a whole mass, like a giant mass of, you know, deadites are formed together and they're destroying a city. Maybe that can be part of the road
and you have
trip.
to fight 3 people with chainsaws. I think that's the movie right there.
Yeah,
So.
there you go. Yeah, it might come up out of the ground of an S-Mart. Who knows? In the third act, I don't know. We'll see.
I thought it was cool too. And again, sort of we're talking about remakes and reboots and things like that. When the Marauder was on the move, all I could think about when I wasn't in awe of what they were accomplishing on screen was how much better the remake of The Thing could have been. The reboot, you know, of the Norwegian camp. But instead, you know, they did a bunch of CGI, but there's that creature at the end that's basically 2 bodies that are fused together, and it made me think like, oh, what could have been, and they actually pulled it off here. It was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And as someone who I don't hate the 2011 one, but that's like one of the biggest detriments to I think any horror movie is the use of CG in that, and not good CG.
Right.
You know, it's crazy. Like and yeah, when the 3-headed monstrosity, when the Marauder shows up, that's exactly what it brought to mind, was something like out of The Thing. But it felt like something that could have been in John Carpenter's Thing as opposed to like the 2011 one. And I don't know. Yeah, you're right. What could have been with that movie? Yeah. So the Marauder's a winner in my book. Casey, did you like the Marauder?
I did like the Marauder. Obviously, I loved the way they went about putting them all together because I love society. And as soon again, like Sam said, like as soon as you see like body parts like morphing like they did, instantly brought me to society. But yeah, again, I wasn't expecting it. I think was my biggest thing of like I was not expecting a 3-headed deadite with the mom and 2 teenagers to be the final boss that they're facing. The one thing I didn't like in the finale, I wish she had a one-liner.
Oh,
because any other Ash gets one, Mia even gets one at the end of the 2013 one. I wish she had something. I don't know what would have been the line, and maybe it doesn't feel appropriate when you're shoving a chainsaw into your sister and your niece and nephew and pushing them into a wood chipper, but you could have at least said something fun. I don't know.
Yeah, she could have said something like, "You brought potato salad to the family potluck one time," and then shoved them in. I don't know.
You're off the Christmas card list. Boom.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Mom always said it, and I needed to be more chipper and then push.
Oh, okay. That's the winner. Ding,
That's,
ding, ding.
That's it. That's the one.
Come on, Lee Cronin.
Oh man, yeah. I think Evil Dead Rises.
It's a winner.
If I hadn't just seen Guardians Volume 3, I think I would have said it was my favorite movie of the year. But that movie, like, unexpectedly moved me in ways I was not anticipating. So Evil Dead Rise is my second favorite movie of the year, and the first movie of this year that I think I'm maybe going to award 5 stars to. I think.
Five chainsaws, Sam?
5 chainsaws, yes. 5 chainsaws to Evil Dead Rise. This is like damn near perfect for me. I really like there's not anything I would change about this movie except for maybe the one-liner thing. I agree. Like I said, I don't notice accents. So everyone else's big thing is like I was like, okay. I don't know. Maria once told me, she's like, you're not a very observant person. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
But isn't that kind of a boss move though by Lee Cronin? Like, I've given you everything in this movie, and guess what? I'm not going to give you
one-liner.
Yeah. Like that is the boss move. So
like,
from that
like
standpoint, I can
more.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. I get that.
Doug, what would you give the Evil Dead Rise out of 5 chainsaws?
Easy 5 chainsaws. It's a different beast altogether than anything that's come before. But what's cool about the Evil Dead series is like it's the most consistent franchise I think we have. But tonally all over the place. So consistently entertaining, tonally diverse. It just fills in that gap that you never knew you wanted. So it's awesome. Love it.
Yeah. It's kind of like an ice cream bar. Like there's so many different flavors. And it's like, yeah, you love ice cream, but like you're going to pick one flavor over the other, but they're all delicious.
Yeah. You're talking about ice cream.
They're great. Yeah, exactly.
It's the greatest horror franchise of all time, Evil Dead. And I think Scream is a close competition, but I just think the highs of Evil Dead far outweigh the highs of the Scream series, or even looking at the lows. Like I think the lows, which there aren't many for Evil Dead, are far better than the lows of the Scream franchise.
The lows are still like 3.5-star movies. So.
Yeah, and I think this is the greatest horror franchise of all time. I'm giving this one 4 out of 5 chainsaws for now, knowing full well when I rewatch it, it's going to be a 5-star movie. I'm just waiting for it to come home and rewatch it, and I can give it the 5 chainsaws then. The last little bit I have here, I'm going to give us the Rotten Tomato scores and one little piece of IMDb trivia that we did not touch on. It is that this movie, like Sam said, has grossed $100 million already at the box office for a movie that was set to be released on HBO Max, which is kind of insane that Warner was just going to, I say just going to dump this on HBO Max, which that's not a dig at any other movie that gets put on a streaming service instead of theaters. But looking at how rabid horror fans have been for this movie, showing up for it, having it gross $100 million. One, we are going to get another Evil Dead movie very soon. And I think we are going to see Warner Brothers putting more of their stuff theatrically and pushing it a lot more. This had a great marketing push for it, and I think they're going to hopefully do something right at Warner Brothers. It's not always the easiest thing for them to do, but I think this is going to be a case where they look at the analytics, and the analytics are showing, oh my god, this movie made $100 million on a minimal budget.
Yep, it's a good time to be a horror fan right now.
Yeah,
it is. Rotten Tomato scores, like Doug said, for Evil Dead, the 2013 movie, We have seen a little bit of a critical reappraisal for horror movies. I think this is indicative of that. Critics 84%, audience 77%. I think the 23% of audience is those people that walked out at Staffany that are leaving bad reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. But yeah, 84% from critics. I think that is really good for a studio horror film, studio fifth film in a franchise as well. Yeah, I think that's everybody involved with this movie has to be super happy with everything, with the returns on it and the critical response.
And they all should be. Like, tremendous job. They knocked it out of the park. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And in particular, kudos to Alyssa Sutherland.
Yes.
She is iconic and deserves whatever good things are coming her way after this. Just the range in this one performance. If the Academy was a little more serious about giving horror some love, I think, honestly, I think this is as good as any performance you'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, for one. Yeah. Between like the human version of her character before she's possessed and everything she does afterwards, I mean, she's the best Deadite in the entire franchise by a mile. And I just, she's great. You know, Casey and I, we talk a little bit about awards season and how we don't put much stock in it, but we do love the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. And if she's not nominated for a Fango Chainsaw next year, like, something's wrong.
There's no justice. Yeah, for sure. She's phenomenal. And just the way that she completely throws herself into the meanness of all of it.
Yeah.
And what a job it is to have to be mean to kids, even though it's acting. It's just wow.
Yeah. And that line right before she actually like dies and then becomes the Deadite, the like, it's in me, save my kids. I'm like, oh God, that hurts my heart. Like, especially because at that point in the movie, it's pretty clear that not all of them are making it. It's like, oh crap.
It's a total tour de force performance. Just wow.
Well, huge recommends for Evil Dead Rise from all three of us. This is one to see in the theater with a crowd, as we have all said. No matter if your crowd stays through the entire movie or if they leave halfway through, this is a crowd pleaser for sure.
There's entertainment value in having both crowds. So, yeah, Doug, thank you so much for being on the show, man. We appreciate it, and gosh, it's been so much fun talking Evil Dead with you, man.
Oh, man. Sam, Casey, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast. It's a great way to cap off my weekend. So we got to stay in touch and geek out over movies some more. This has been great.
For sure.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you back, maybe closer to SuperCon, because I know you're going to be there, and obviously we're going to be running the film festival this year. So we'll think of something maybe closer to that and do another episode.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'd love it. And in any event, this has been friggin' amazing. So good luck with this show. Good luck with everything that you're doing. And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doug.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. And before we let you go, though, let's plug Bad Hand Books one more time, and we'll plug our stuff, and we'll get to the end. But where can people follow you and your work?
So you can go to badhandbooks.com, and that will get you to all the books that we've got. That site is always expanding, so I'm going to be putting news and content that you can't get anywhere else. And then you can follow us on social media. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Bad Hand Books. So I believe that there are underscores between the words. But just if you can't find us, try a couple of different combos and you'll get us.
Sounds awesome.
Go ahead,
All
Sam.
right. I'm good. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I forgot I do the plugs. If you like Screams from the Basement and you want more, you can subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and Anchor. And you can always watch the show on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And as we say just about every episode, and we promise we're getting on it, but we're gonna actually be active on TikTok when we figure it out, because we're old people.
Sure.
So,
we might
yeah.
be. I don't know. I don't.
We
like
might
it.
be. We're gonna try. We're gonna try, I guess.
I thought about mentioning our TikTok channel, but it's horrible. I'm horrible at TikTok, so you can technically follow Bad Handbooks on TikTok, but yeah.
Hey,
Casey-
we're right there with you.
Yep. Oh man. Well, that's been Screams
That's the
from the
show.
Basement. Thank you, Doug, again for coming and joining us. This has been so much fun to geek out with Evil Dead and talk about our mutual lack of TikTok knowledge. Yeah. This has
Cool.
been
That's it. We
That's
did
it.
the show. We
did
did
the
the show. I'm
I
going to
don't
give
know
our
why we're
sign
being
off.
awkward about it.
I'm going to give our sign off, and we're going to give a quick plug to our friends at the Prescribed Films Podcast Network. But again, Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you. Doug.
If you want to stick around after our music, we'll talk a little bit more. Maybe we can talk about what movies we want to have you back on for. We'll see.
Sure.
We'll leave a little tease for the people listening out there. But thank you all for tuning in, and sweet screams.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.